Welcome. We'll call the meeting to order at 9:03. And we will turn it over to Trustee Charchin for our land acknowledgement.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to our division office located at the traditional land and territory of the Niitsitapi, Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, the Blackfoot people, within the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta.
Thank you. And we'll ask everyone to now rise for O Canada. Thank you. And that was presented by Isabel Sellen School students. We'll move on in our agenda to approval of the consent agenda. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as presented or amended. Can I get somebody to make that motion, please? Trustee Long? Any discussion?
I'd like to pull the minutes from the last meeting. There's an error in it.
Okay. If you want to just share that way, Nikki brings up the minutes, please. Well, just share the. Yep. Just share what it is, and then we can.
I don't have the minutes in front of me, but on the minutes, on the when they're we were talking about the which I can't remember which number it was of the awards. Or yeah, no, not the terms of reference. The friends of the education nomination. On that, you got against. You got trustee a recorded vote for. It was me. Yegas. Against was Long. You got that mixed up.
Thank you with that. If there are no other changes to the agenda, to the minutes, we will ask for the consent agenda to be approved as amended. Seeing nothing else, all those in favor? That is carried. Ask for, moving on to C, the recommendation is that the board, that the March 2023 of 2026 regular board meeting agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees as presented or amended. Okay, somebody make that motion, please. Trustee Hodges. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest, that the Board of Trustees declare if they have any conflicts of interest relating to agenda items for the March 23rd, 2026 regular board meeting, and if so, declare them. Seeing none, we will move on. At this time, I would ask for a motion to go in camera before we start the rest of our agenda. Trustee Hodges. All those in favor? That is carried. So I'd ask just everyone go to the next room as we pause to go in camera at the start of the meeting. Thanks. welcome back. So I'd ask for a motion to come out of in camera. Trustee Yegus, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. We will resume our agenda on E1. And that is Regional School Council Terms of Reference. Trustee Long will review the updated terms of reference for the Regional School Council Committee with the Board of Trustees. And the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve the terms of reference for the Regional School Council Committee as presented or amended. You want to make that motion, Trustee Long? Perfect, thank you. I'll turn the floor over to you.
First of all, I'd like to apologize to everyone, and not that it's necessarily something serious, but I've brought this to you 3 times, and it's totally because of my ignorance, my misunderstanding of things, and I'm hoping I'm at least getting close this time. I've sent it to you. You've all had a couple weeks to read it through. I would, while we're public, I would just like to thank the trustees that helped me understand where I was going wrong when trying to do this. I would like to make an amendment, Mr. Chair, if I may. So if you're reading down and you get to membership, Part 2, 2 trustees. 1 trustee will assume the role of the chairperson and 1 the role of vice chairperson. I would like to change the next sentence, which says the role will alternate each year, to the role may alternate each year. And I'm saying that because it would leave it up to the 2 people on the committee to decide if they wanted to switch. So that's the only thing I'd like to amend, is to change that to may from will. Otherwise, I'm open to hearing discussion, amendments, or changes. And as I said, I hope I'm on the right track this time.
Thank you, Trustee Long. So we have a presented terms of reference as amended, and would ask if there's any discussion. No, we'll do it as amended, that they're being presented with that amendment in. If there's anything with the whole, you can speak to the amendment or anything as a whole in general.
Sorry, Trustee Long, I have 3 things that I just wanted to bring up for consideration. So my apologies. Hang on, I gotta find my notes now. Number one is, I think we are trying to make the meetings virtual, 2 virtual, 1 in person, I think it said. I'm just wondering, do we want to consider, we limit now the attendance to chair and vice chair, and if the meetings are virtual, do we want to consider or opening it up to more parents? Shall I say all 3 of them and then go on? Also, it indicates that trustees are expected to attend the regional school council meetings. If that's the case, should we add that it is part per diem or monthly, just for clarity around that part of it? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, let me go. I've got too many documents open here.
It's in the bullet at the top of the screen right now.
Chairperson, Nikki, can you highlight it if you see it? You got it?
No, keep going. Very top of the screen, the top bullet, right there. No, down 1 now. Right there. Your mouse is on it.
All trustees are expected to attend the regional school council meetings. Are we good? I'm just to add whether it is per diem or monthly for clarification. And the last piece that I wanted to throw forward for consideration, our purpose, one of the points of our purpose is to facilitate an avenue of communication between the board, the Regional School Council Committee, and local school council chairs. The committee will provide knowledge, mentorship, planning, discussion, and advocacy. And celebration was the second point. So if those are our purpose, I'm wondering why we require principals or designate attendance. It doesn't seem to fit into what our purpose is, so I'm not sure if that's a problem or not, but we may want, if we want principals or a designate to attend, then perhaps in our purpose we should include something that includes them. Just food for thought.
Trustee Long, you had your hand up? And then Trustee Kimber.
Okay, I'll address. Okay, I will address point 2 first. So in our policy 8, under our per diem honorarium, item N, regional school council meetings is in there for everybody to be remunerated for going to them.
I just want to talk about the principal piece of it. I think that we've always included principals because they are part of building the agendas with the school council chairs and vice chairs. And I think it's always really good to have them in discussion with the chairs and councils and to see what's happening at the board level. So we've always included them so they know what's happening within our school councils.
Any other discussion?
Sorry, Trustee Charchin, what was your point number 1 again? You threw too much at me at once on Monday morning.
Come on, it's all right, it's Monday morning. My first one was around limiting attendance to the chair and the vice chair if we're having virtual meetings. We have some difficulty sometimes in getting attendance, and maybe it could include a designate if it's not the chair or vice chair, or even open it up to more parents. I'm not sure where I stand on this, just these are things that crossed my mind as I was reading through the terms of reference.
Thank you. I know in the past, we've had discussions around inviting other members of the school council. I think it does depend on the topic that the regional school council is hosting. And it's not saying that we can never not invite more school councils to participate. I think some of it is when you're just going through if they need some education on how to chair a meeting or anything like that, then we try and limit it to this. I think that this doesn't necessarily limit just the chair and the vice chair, but I think it allows us to be able to have a discussion and be able to facilitate adding more people to the virtual meetings if so needed. But I thought there was in there designate somewhere, but it is there. So yeah. And so I feel like although it does say committee chair and vice, I think it is still up to the discretion of the regional council chair and alternate, because of maybe the topics that are being presented.
Trustee Long.
Would this make things clearer if it was amended to say the chair and vice chair and or designates?
I think I would agree with that. I think that would be okay. I was just thinking about when we did the regional school council around the 4-day week, we made it clear that others could attend. And so maybe that fits, because when it's a topic that aligns with the greater audience, we can make sure that we are clear, like in that case. So I'm good with either.
One more tiny thing. So that bullet that we had the little bit of confusion trying to find where it says all trustees expected to attend, it's down right there. I would split that paragraph into another bullet.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, would you like to close, Trustee Long?
Again, I would like to thank everybody for their patience, especially that. And I'm glad this is done, and we will move ahead from here.
Thank you, Trustee Long. The recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the terms of reference for the Regional School Council Committee as amended. I'll call a question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you so much. Moving on to E2. The Awards Committee met on March 11th, 2026 and completed a draft budget and criteria for the annual art gala. Committee Chair Kathy Churchin will review the recommendations. We'll start with recommendation 1, that the Board of Trustees approve the budget for the art gala as presented or amended. Trustee Churchin, would you like to make that motion and lead us through
Yes.
it? Thank you.
I'm just going to wait for Nikki to bring it up. With your permission, Chair Toon, can I just go through a couple of highlights that have changed since the awards committee met after the previous conversation last month, and then which will lead to the budget and criteria? Is that okay? Okay, I'm not going to go through it all. I think I've just kind of highlighted the points where there were changes made. So under the criteria and requirements, we're recommending now a maximum of 15 pieces will be considered from each school, replacing the 5 previously. Can I just keep going? Scrolling down a little bit further, we would like to recommend that 54 pieces, which is the same number of pieces, will be selected, with at least 1 piece being selected from each school that's submitted. Previously, we had 2 from each school in each colony, so we're saying now that at least 1 piece would be selected from each school that submits, with a total of 54. We've also added a disclaimer: while all reasonable care will be taken with the submissions, Livingstone Range School Division and its Board of Trustees assume no responsibility or liability for any loss, damage, or theft of artwork submitted for this competition. We also, the selection committee will be the awards and recognition committee trustees and the superintendent or designate. The art gala will be held in October and November as previously. Are we on the criteria or the budget motion right now? Can somebody remind me? Budget? Okay, I'll skip down past that part, Nikki, and I'll come back to the criteria when we get to that motion. When we looked at the budget for 54 pieces of art, the framing and material is budgeted at $4,000. The awards that students receive, each of the recipients receive a $25 award for a cost of $1,400. Refreshments and snacks at a cost of $600 for a total budget of $6,000.
Any questions for the committee around the budget? We're letting you off easy. No, would you like to close on the motion, trustee Chartran? Okay, we'll call a question. All those in favor? And that is carried. We'll now go with recommendation number 2, that the Board of Trustees approve the criteria for the annual art gala as presented or amended. Someone like to make the motion? Trustee Chartran? And I'll turn the floor over to you to lead us through the criteria.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to extend a huge thank you to Mr. Bart Heine from the art teacher at Willow Creek Composite, who helped us experience and create this criteria for non-art specialists. And so he started by sharing with us that art is for the people, for everyone, and everyone can respond to art, and every perspective has value. And so he led the awards committee through a process of actually looking at art, feeling the art, critiquing the art, and then going through the selection process that we would like to recommend to you. I don't think I need to read all of that. I've just shared about the experience that we went through. We had time we looked at a piece of art, we had time to reflect. Then the committee would each discuss the artwork for their perspective, and then we would discuss it as a group, and then we would rank it. And it was an experience for me personally, who feels very, let's just say, not confident, to go through a process that I went, yes, that I feel like I can do this, and I do have an opinion, and I do have a perspective, and I do have value, and I think the rest of us that were there also felt that. Allowed the process to unfold through careful looking, thoughtful conversation, and shared reflection. We, through that process, then we identified who we thought which art piece of 3 pieces that we would have chose if we had to pick those. Trustee Yegas asked if we could have an art rubric attached to it, not necessarily for the judging, but for us to come up with wording and ideas that we may not have, and promote questions that we would ask as a group. So that is a process that we'd like to put forward, with the art rubric attached as a supporting document. So I think that's all I will share at this point. If they're be happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Yegas?
I would just really like to thank Kathy and also Bart for all the work they did on this. When we went through this exercise with Bart, it was really interesting to look at the thing. Nikki was with us, and it was a really excellent exercise, and I think it really helped in terms of when we're going to judging, because when you first look at a piece, you think, oh yeah, this is great. But then when you start to look at what he had said, I wanted the rubric because I always like to use rubrics, but not as a primary one, but just there's something if we want terminology or another perspective, especially if you're having problems making a decision. So once again, thank you very much for and especially to Bart for the help he gave.
I just want to say thank you too. I just think that having this outline in here is really smart. If you're stepping into this committee as a new time trustee and you're expected to judge art and you don't have what's set out in front of you here, I think it's really smart to put this in here and give you really good guidelines on how to look at it. I know when we first had this committee and we were walking through with the art teachers and trying to narrow it down, and when you're not sure what you're looking at necessarily all the time, it is really, I think this is really smart, and I think this is great. Thank you.
I just had a question, I guess, about the process. So when these 54 pieces are presented and you go through and you judge them, is the wording in the rubric like what you, like the report card for the piece of art, and then the student gets that back? Question mark? So do they ever see that?
So no, they would not see the rubric. That is not the guiding document. I wasn't aware that the recipients got something back in the past. We never have. So that was not something that we considered. The rubric definitely would not be shared with the student. It may or may not even be used. It's a judging support document. To provide we didn't consider that. We'd have to go back and think about how, if we approve this criteria, then if we want to provide some sort of feedback to the winners, we'd have to go back to the table and think that out. I think it's possible. We just haven't done it.
So a follow-up then is just basically when you get 54 of them, it's the however many winners, they only know that they're a winner. They don't know rankings or anything along those lines. I'm just trying to understand the whole process and how it all works. I've never been part of it before.
Yeah, so you're just selected for the showcase of the student artwork. It's not a ranking. There is no divisions or even specific categories like landscape or portrait or things that are looking for. It's really just about showcasing the student art. It'd be really challenging if we tried to pare it down because you don't know what is going to be submitted. From year to year, it really varies. It's more what the students are learning about and where they are. So I appreciate the trustees bringing this information forward with the rubric in it because it's guiding, but it's not so prescriptive where you're having to do a scorecard, because that would just take so much time with that amount of art pieces that for the trustees to do it, I would, you'd have to set up a tent and be here for a couple days because it's a lot of work in general and doing. I appreciate all the amazing work that Nikki does to bring forward this annual event because it's so amazing to showcase the student artwork. Trustee Hodges.
And I just have one comment, and maybe it kind of ties back to what Trustee Gember just said. In the disclaimer part, you have submitted for a competition. It's not actually a competition. And so I think that if it was a competition, then it would be required to have feedback, right? And so I think that if we took that word competition out and for this art gala and replaced it with the word art gala, maybe that, because I think competition is just, it's not. So yeah.
So we have a suggestion to, I don't know exactly where that was on.
This is under the disclaimer at the very bottom under criteria and requirements. The very bottom bullet.
Okay, so we have that on the floor to amend that wording. Trustee Yegus?
I would like to change the wording of this instead of saying this competition to say the gala, the art gala.
Okay. Any discussion around the amendment? The word competition and change it to gala. Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? That is carried. Now, if there's any further discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, Trustee Chartron, would you like to close, please?
I think I would just like to say that I feel very confident that we've got some guiding information here as the committee changes and to provide to schools. And yeah, I certainly, I think as a committee, we've learned a lot and consolidated a lot and look forward to putting this forward.
With that, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on in our agenda to E3, instructional allocation. The instructional funding allocation is the way in which divisional resources are allocated out to schools, departments, and initiatives. The proposed formula was discussed with senior management and will be shared with school administrators at an admin council meeting. Mr. Perry, Associate Superintendent, Business Services, will share the board's summary of the proposed formula. And we have a recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the instructional funding allocation as presented for the 2026-2027 school year. Can I get somebody to make that motion, please? Trustee Burdette, thank you. And would you like to speak to that, Trustee Burdette, or hand it over to Mr. Berry? Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Okay, thank you. So as the intro provides, this is the instructional allocation formula, how we allocate funds out to the schools in the way of resources, whether that be dollar-wise or whether that be staffing and so forth. And so we have shared this with senior management and with the admin council for feedback. We've gone through a transition over the years from allocating resources based on a specific formula and giving all the resources out to the schools to holding a few things more centrally as far as supports for the school to be able to support them in a much broader way. And we've allocated resources for the most part based on need. And so as I go through this, you'll see a trend, and it hasn't changed from the prior year, but the trend is to analyze what the needs are out at the schools and recognizing that there's a certain level of resources that are required. Some schools are higher based on their need, and some schools would be lower just based on the students that are attending and the needs that they might have. So that's kind of a overarching intro to this document here. So the first thing we start with is allocation of teaching staff and support staff. We do have a method of taking into consideration a few things before we necessarily take into account some of the comments from the administrator. So we look at a preliminary allocation for teaching based on overall enrollment for the school, what the class size recommendations were in the past, whether it's a small school, compared through the division. So we'll have like a K to 6 and we'll have 2 divisions in that school. How does that compare to other schools within the division in those same divisions? So like 1 to 3, K to 3, and 4 to 6 and so forth. We also take into consideration that all schools need administration. They also need learning support teachers and resources. CTS for some of the high schools and junior high, and then FNMI. So we get certain dollars from the provincial government that are targeted towards some of these areas, and so we take those areas into consideration, like FNMI and things of that nature as well. Once we come up with our preliminary allocation, then there's discussions with Mr. Feller and all of the administration teams in regards to the context that they may be facing in any given year. And, just saying this is what your enrollment is, dividing that by, the number of teachers doesn't always take into consideration the context that they may be surrounding the need out at the school. And so that is part of the dialogue that goes forward with regards to determining the number of teachers that will be at any given school. We always have to consider what our resources are that are coming from the provincial government and from our tuition agreements with the First Nations, and wherever our revenue might be coming from. But we do our best to provide and satisfy the needs that are out at the school level. As far as support staff, we do a similar process. The discussions are with Lisa Furukawa, and she has communication with the learning support teachers out at the schools. They have discussions about the students and the needs. and as well as the administration team, and then allocate positions such as educational assistants, child youth care workers, and time for family school liaison counselors. As we go through this document with administrators, we, seek feedback with regards to, what are the priority areas, for supporting the schools. And, when we talk about mental health and we talk about, you know, the challenges that schools might be facing, this is a big conversation with regards to the administrators. So we want to ensure that we have the needs met out at the individual schools based on the context, and that's why it's important to have that conversation versus just allocating, so many positions to each school. That's the staffing component. Obviously, they do have, I should say one thing, we do recognize that each school, regardless of size, needs a full-time administrative assistant. And so that's almost a fixed allocation in our minds with regards to somebody needs to be able to be there to support the administration team and the reception of the school and parents coming in and things of that nature, answering phones. Schools do need to operate, and like I said before, many of the supports are coming divisionally, and so we look at what schools are responsible for, and we allocate a per student amount to schools. We call those their mini budgets, but they utilize them for supplies, for textbooks, for some costs that they would incur in the matter of operations. That doesn't include utilities or anything of that nature. That comes from a different budget. When we look at home education, the basic per student funding received from Alberta Education is directly allocated to the school or program that's providing the support. And in most cases, there are some cases where a school has provided a little bit of support, but in most cases, that's our pursuits area where Tara Tana, the principal of pursuits, would support the home education program. English as a second language is another fund that we receive from the provincial government, and we again pool these resources to support from a divisional perspective, but we also give a small amount that we allocate out to schools to support individual students with supplies and things of that nature. FNMI allocation is typically in the form of staffing. Those schools that have a predominant FNMI population, we allocate additional staffing to support that area, and we do get funding from the provincial government for that. Our tuition agreement is built on dollars being received from the First Nation bands, and we utilize that for the basic education for the various things that we also do in the FNMI area. The Hutterite Colony schools, we get specific funding for them as well. Those funds go directly to the school. Much of that is the EAL, English as an additional language, which allows to provide additional supports for them as well. The international program allocation is really dependent on the number of students that we bring in. This past year, we had over 60 students. This is the largest year we've ever had in the international program. We do allocate, so we include the student numbers when we're looking at staffing. So when we know what our allocation or what our numbers will be for international program and where they're most likely going to go, we take that into consideration when we're allocating staff. So it's in the form of staffing in many cases, and we do give them the per student funding to provide for supplies and things of that nature. And then it subsidizes some of the other areas in the overall budget for instructional. The final point there is adjustments. We, every year, the context of how we operate changes, and so we always have the ability to adjust that based on the context that might arise throughout the year and during the year. And so that's really important that we have the ability to adjust, and so we will hold a couple contingent positions where we have the ability to do so and allocate those based on needs and things that come up during the year. So that's really the overall method or formula for allocating instructional dollars to schools. If there's any questions, I can take those at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I have 3 questions for you. So the first one was about the teacher allocation section. And you mentioned that based on class size recommendations. So I'm curious if that class size recommendation, is that based on legislation or ministry guidance or board policy, or is it research evidence? Where does that come from?
So way back when, there was what was called the ACOL recommendations. And so that came out with a suggested class size levels. And so I don't know that there's legislation that has come out to date with regards to, any mandate of what that would be. So those numbers come from way back when. And so that dates back to, I'm looking around to see who might be. Jim might have been there when those ACOL recommendations came out. And it was a document, it was a research that the provincial government did, and they put the report together, and that's where those numbers came from.
So just not to repeat everything that Mr. Perry just said, but there's no, the province moved away from collecting class size data in 2019. This year, they came back to it with the complexity data that we provided to them in November. And that complexity data, pardon me, resulted in the 2 complexity teams that Livingstone Range was assigned. As Mr. Perry said, there's nothing in legislation guiding divisions in terms of class sizes. Some of the things that we will be taking into consideration, both the large class sizes, but also small class sizes. So things undersubscribed, if you will, sections of particularly high school courses, which have a dollar figure attached to them. So it's maximizing resource without getting to the size that can't be managed. So we will be using the document that Mr. Perry referenced as a working document, but there is no legislated or policy or procedure in place to guide, if you will.
Number 2. So with regards to the English as an additional language funding, can you just speak to how that's used in practice? So is it allocated towards EAs, or what types of supplies and materials are covered in that?
So I can speak a little bit to it. So we do have a divisional EAL teacher that supports the schools. So we utilize some of those dollars to support that area, and that individual would support all of the schools in the EAL programming. The amount that is provided to the schools is really up to the schools to determine how to best use the resources and supplies that they need for that programming. So they would work along with the EAL teacher to understand what additional needs and resources they may need to purchase or procure for, supporting that program. And specifically in the EAL for the colonies, the majority of those dollars go towards EAs, educational assistance, to support that area. So they, in addition to the learning support, educational assistance that are allocated out to the schools, they take that into consideration and support their early learning as well as the EAL needs that are out there.
Okay, and number 3 is
Number
about
three.
the Hutterite Colony.
Okay.
So if you could provide some clarity on how the Hutterite Colony school allocation works in practice, particularly how the per colony funding is applied when a colony splits or when new colony schools are established, and how we ensure that resource levels remain equitable across all schools in the division.
Okay. Perfect. So this, for the most part, when we look at the resources that are brought in for for the colony schools, they're sufficient to cover what the educational costs have been in the past. And so we would take all the resources that are provided and allocate through an agreement that we have with all the colonies, 1 FTE teacher for each colony, and then they would have whatever resources are left over for the allocation. They would have the ability to provide supplies and so forth, just like any other school. So the EAL allocation would go there, the per student funding would go there. We get $25,000 per Hutterite colony through the funding manual. And so those would all go there, and we would utilize those dollars. We have had conversations every year. We meet with the colony German teachers and ministers and have a dialogue with them as to some of the challenges that are up and coming. And historically, we haven't faced a lot of splitting colonies, but we're beginning to. And so we've had to be a little more creative, where we have a small amount of students in any one school to meet the needs in a different way than a full-time FTE teacher. The agreement also provides us a way that if there's a deficit to the colony budget after the allocation, that it is actually paid for by the colonies. And so the small schools that have fewer students will be the first to contribute. There's a formula within the agreement. They will be the first to contribute, and then after it's shared by the rest of the colonies. I think it goes up to a maximum of $15,000 that each colony could pay before it's shared amongst the rest of the colonies. So there's a mechanism to do that as well. And so we have required that in the last year, and to access additional funding for that. The other side of things is that we've opened it up for colonies when we've said, you know, the resources can only go this far, for them to have the ability to provide additional resources to support their own students as well. So that mechanism is in there as well, and that's a change over the last year or two. And so, yeah, that's how it goes. Yep.
Any further questions? Seeing none, would you like to close, Trustee Burdette?
No, thanks very much for that information. I think to me it looks like we have a handle on what we're trying to do. And so, yeah, thank you.
With that, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Next is E4, Quarterly Financial Report. The Audit Committee met with LRSD Financial Team on March 13th and reviewed the second quarter report ending from February 29th. The Audit Committee will provide a summary of the review process and key findings. We have a recommendation that the Audit Committee recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the quarterly financial report as presented. Trustee Gimber, and we'll welcome our guest and ask Mr. Prairie to introduce our new addition.
Okay, thank you, Chair Toon. So as you've been aware, we've had some changes in our finance department. Mr. Jordan Gunderson has moved on to a new opportunity for him, which we're excited for him and his new adventure. In that left a big hole to fill, and we were very fortunate to find the individual that sits beside me now. His name is Akshit Saini, and he has been here for about a month now, a little more? Yeah. Training with Jordan as he was on his way out, and so together we're going to provide the financial report for the second quarter, but I'd like to maybe give him the opportunity just to introduce himself, if that would be okay.
So yeah, my name is Akshid. You can call me Ash. I'm really excited to be here, work with the schools, communities, and the board. Like Jeff mentioned, I've had a chance to work with Jordan, the current administration, and very excited to build on the good work already being done. My background is in public practice. I was working at M&P before I came here. So both my parents are teachers, and that really inspires me to be here as well. So yeah, that's all about me. So let's dive into,
Thank you, welcome.
thanks.
We're excited to have you.
Right, we can dive into our financial report.
All these people that get applauses. I don't think I get very many applauses here, so I'm feeling a
It's
little
happened
left
for the
out.
second time for me, so I may be doing something right.
I've been here too long, it must be. You guys are too used to me. Anyway, so Trustee Gimber, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I can start off the first 3 slides if you guys would like. So the audit committee met, and yeah, here we go. So this here is the report for the 6-month period ending February 28th, 2026, which means it represents 50% of our fiscal year has passed and 60% of the school year. We met with management and our 2 public members on March the 12th. And we reviewed in detail all of the revenues and expenditures. We went by objects and by program, and went over our schedule of net assets. The audit committee's responsibility is to review the details of the financial results up until the end of the quarter, and then report to the board the results of that review and include any areas we feel the board should be aware of. Our meeting lasted about 2.5 hours, and we went through every one of the financial statements that was there. They provided a thorough review, answered all of the questions that we had, and they did so to the satisfaction of the entire committee. And we are pleased to report, we are confident the financial reports for the second quarter are accurate based on our review. And now I will hand it over to Ash and Jeff.
All right, so overall, there is a decrease in our financial position as of February 28th, 2026 for $447,000. And in the next slides, we will look at some more detail behind that. So the first column here is our 2026 actual budget, where we were budgeting for a deficit of $170,000, 171 rounded up. The next one is where we expect to be at the end of quarter 2, and we were expecting a deficit of 975. And the next column there is our actuals, where we are actually sitting at a deficit of 447. For revenues, we are under by $700,000. Expenditures, we are behind by 1.2 million. And overall, we are looking a little bit healthy with our deficit position by $527,000. However, there's an adjustment that might come towards the end of the year because our enrollment is down from what we were projecting, and that will significantly impact our revenues down the line. Moving on.
Just before we move on, I just want to say one thing as well. So when you look at the expected budget of quarter 2 and compare that to our original budget of we expect a $170,000 deficit overall over the entire year, but we would expect a $970,000 deficit after quarter 2. That is consistent with prior years where a lot of our expenditures are over 10 months, but we get our revenue over 12 months. And so you would expect that our deficit earlier on would be higher and that it would even out over the year. So the fact that we're in a better position demonstrates that we'll be on target at least or under target by the end of the year. So, sorry.
No, all good. For revenues, for Government of Alberta, we are $714,000 behind than where we would expect to be. Now, the big one there is the $1.92 million clawback. So the government clawed back $1.92 million of our funding for the days the teachers were on strike. Now, on the expense side of things, we saw savings because we didn't have to pay teachers for that period. The government also withheld $155,000 of our teacher retirement fund contributions. This was again due to the labor action, so we didn't get that money for that period again. We were also budgeting for a mental health grant for $109,000, and the reason for that not coming into our revenues is because we ended up using that last year, So it showed up in our last year revenue and not the current year. Provincial nutrition revenue, we are under by $75,000. Now, this is a targeted grant, and we only recognize revenue as we spend the money. So the reason we are under for our provincial nutrition revenue is because we haven't spent the money over there. We do get nutrition revenue from 4 different sources. So provincial, federal nutrition program. We also have Northback and Breakfast Club. All the other grants except the nutrition one have more strict spending requirements, specifically on timing. So we're trying to spend the revenue, let the money from the other grants first before we spend the nutrition revenue. Other areas where we have gotten more money than where we were expecting is we got $1.53 million of salary settlement payments. This was meant to cover retroactive pay from 2024 to 25 school year, and then also increases for the current year. That's all we've gotten so far, and we will be getting more than every month as we get a little bit more to cover the increase for the remainder of the year. Then some grants where we got some more money that we didn't budget for was the Alberta Research Network, curriculum, and dual credit. And then we also got bumped up for our home ed funding by $5,000. For federal government revenue, we're under by $104,000. We get this revenue for our students who attend on reserves, specifically Piikani and Kainai. So we budgeted for 120 students attending, but we only had 106 enrolled. So 13.5 fewer students equates to $104,000 less received so far. And other areas where we are over is $50,000 in nutrition donations that we brought into revenue up to February 28th. We got $37,000 from estate of Philip D. Sokorov. We haven't identified this person yet, and we have been trying to send a thank you to that party. So if anybody knows who he is, please let us know. Then our investments did a little bit better than what we anticipated, and we are $13,000 over in that category. Expenditures, we are $1.2 million behind. And moving on to the next slide over here. And the big one here was of the 16 days of reduced pay during the labor action. And the other big reason here is we budgeted for summer school salaries, which we don't incur until Q4. For certificated staff, yes, we did end up paying lower. We did end up paying less for the period the teachers were on strike, but then we also had to pay for retroactive pay from September to October, so that offsets the certificated staff expense line. For non-certificated staff, we're $37,000 over budget, and specifically support staff sub costs have been 12% above last year. And I think the reason for that is that we have had more absences in that area. So moving on. Services, contracts, and supplies. The reason we put that here is this is an area where we're quite underspent. We're only at about 48.7% of our expenditures that we have spent compared to budget. The big one over here is our PD and training, where we're only 20.9% spent. And I think the big one over there is our divisional day, that it's a day where we get all our staff together, we invite high quality speakers, and then we also have a meal for everybody. So it's quite an expensive but a valuable event. So We didn't host that last year, I mean, because of the labor action again. So we didn't have that expense this year. We can move on to the next slide. So schedule of net assets, I'm still learning this a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure, so I'll let Jeff present the slide.
Okay. You're doing great so far. The schedule of net assets, obviously, this is a point in time. So the quarterly report is basically reporting where we are at the end of February. And so as of the end of August, our percent of budgeted expenditures was 2.78%. So we've spoken of this before, whereas this is you take your overall your overall operating reserves, and you divide them by your overall expenditure budget and see what percentage you would have available in there. We have a maximum of 6% that we can carry. That's changed over time. We've talked about that a little bit. The government says you have a minimum of 1% that you have to hold, and we've talked about this before where I feel that being under 2% would not be very prudent and proactive of our division if we're not there. So we've always targeted to be above that. The budget for 2026, we identified that we would be with the $170,000 deficit, which is the majority of that is our ARO. We'd be at 2.5%, and currently we're at 3.72% as of the results up to the end of February. That'll change over time, but that gives you an indication of where we sit financially as a jurisdiction. We're above that 2%, and we're currently above the 2.5%. So, you're welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation as well. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the schedule of net assets for operating reserves? We've talked about this in the past, okay. Oh, Lori has a question.
I do have a question, but it was before this.
Okay.
Do you want me to go to it now, or do you want me to?
You can ask and
You can go to it now.
Okay,
Totally.
so my first question was around the Alberta Research Grant. What exactly is that?
that is a good question. So I believe that one is working on the place-based programming. John, do you want to speak to it? Do you know a little bit more about that with the University of Lethbridge?
Excuse me, yes, that is. It's research that the University of Lethbridge undertook around place-based education, which Chad Kuzik was involved in that. They are continuing that research, and we're actually going to expand it with the University of Alberta, University of Lethbridge over the next little while too.
Okay, and then my second question was actually around that donation from the estate that you don't know who the gentleman was, which we appreciate always donations, but I just wondered, was it a targeted donation or just was free to use for the division, or how did it come about?
So we did try to determine, we did try to determine if that was a targeted grant, but we could not determine it, so we had to bring it to our revenues right now. And I did speak to Jordan about that one as well. And that was the reason we wanted to reach out to the party so we can determine what that money would be for. So no, we don't know that right now.
So when he talks about targeted grants, you recognize them when you expend them. And so if we receive a certain amount of money that's targeted, and we only spend half of it, we would defer the rest into the future until we expend more in that area. This one's not targeted, so we have to recognize it as revenue now, so it runs through our budget now. So it'll, if we don't identify where we would expend it, or it would become part of our operating reserves. Yep.
Maybe kind of a silly question, but do receiving these kind of things that affect our revenue numbers affect what the government, Alberta government gives us?
No, no, they wouldn't, because they have a formula as to how they allocate funding for us, and it doesn't take into consideration the other funding we get. So,
Yeah. And I believe like most donations that we would receive would be targeted as well. So this one was the weird one that we couldn't figure out what it's for.
somehow this individual had an attachment or a tie to the division, from many years ago and put it in his will. And when they did the estate, that's what was provided to the division. So we very much would love to pass back a thank you, but at this point, we don't know.
So from a financial perspective, receiving donations or these kind of things, it is better if they are targeted versus not?
It depends. If they feel strongly that they want it to go in a certain area and for a certain purpose, then we want to ensure that it goes for that area. Not being targeted, we have the ability to put it where we need it the most, right? So I wouldn't say that it's better if it's targeted, but we certainly, if they have a desire to spend it in a certain area, then we want to ensure it goes there. But, yeah. Next slide.
Okay, dive in a bit into each of our programs by area. Instruction and early education. To this point, we are sort of on pace. This slide compares where we are right now to where we were last year. So for instruction and early education, we are sitting at a deficit of 524, and last year we are at $448,000. So sort of on pace. Maintenance, we are at a deficit of $18,000, and compared to last year, we were at $255,000. The big one over there is, I just got to know that about as well, is we have started to make an adjustment quarterly on some of the federal revenue that we allocate to maintenance as well as interest revenue. So we were not making that adjustment quarterly in previous years. We were just making it towards the end of the year. So that's why we see that big of a difference over there. Transportation, we were at a surplus of $36,000. Compared to last year, we were at $112,000. Board and system admin, we have a surplus of $60,000 compared to $16,000 right rounded up last year. Okay. And this came up in our audit meeting with the audit committee that we should put this slide up for the benefit of the entire board. So in March, we received $600,000 to fund 2 complexity teams. Each team includes 1 teacher and 2 education assistants, and the teams will be established at AB Daily and WA Day. This is, again, a targeted grant, so any unspent funds will be carried over to the next year. And lastly, we will be required to make quarterly reporting for the staff that we hired for these positions.
So during our meeting, it was mentioned to us that there's actually 2 different complexity grants. Can you just tell us about the 2 different ones? Because they show up somewhere in our financials, and when you look at them, you think that it's this one that's all over the news right now, but it's not. Bless you.
I don't have much context around that, but yes, I know there are 2 grants. They're both named quite similar.
So there's a historical grant that was called Complexity in the Classroom that we were receiving over time. And when it was initially provided, it was a mid-year increase, and it was provided to us. And so there's a profile line item for it. The new funding that we receive is related to the analysis and the research the government did around the complexity in the classroom. So it's specifically called Class Size and Complexity Grant. And so it's different. And the previous grant that was historical, although it wasn't targeted, I mean, it was utilized in the area. We spend more in the area of complexity than we actually receive overall. And so, although it wasn't targeted, it was being used for that purpose. This grant, like Ash indicated, is targeted. We would carry it over in the event that we only use a portion of it. So one of the things that was discussed and communicated from the provincial government on this is that the money, the $600,000 that we received is this year, it's for 25-26. But we can, we only have so many months left to utilize it. We put in place the resources that we can at this point. Whatever we don't expend, we carry over into the new year and utilize it in 26, 27. So we anticipate, in addition to this, this grant was for elementary, for K to 6. We anticipate that in the new budget, when we receive that information, that there may be consideration for junior high, senior high. And so there may be additional allocations, but we'll wait and see. This point in time, we don't have what that is for us.
I just have a quick question along with that. And so if we have carryover, do you anticipate that be deducted from the possibility of getting a new grant for the next school year? And I just wondered if we also have hired those teams in place for this school year already.
So those dollars are specifically for AB Daily and WA Day. So any funds coming in the future will be tied to a school as well. And so we anticipate with the complexity teams. So they won't decrease this because of that. They'd add the new because it's for another school, different complexity. And whether we've hired or not, I'll leave that up to Sean to share.
So just to finish that off, the minister was at our CAS conference last week and spoke a little bit about this further. There will be more funding allocated for complexity teams in the 2026-2027 school year. We are not sure if we will get another team or not. I would expect that we probably will, but the minister was fairly close-lipped about how the next process will be done in terms of whether it will continue to be elementary, junior high, or high school. I would anticipate that they will continue with elementary schools and get those complexity teams managed throughout the system. But there are more teams and dollars coming. There are dollars allocated in the budget for those complexity teams. In terms of hiring, we've identified, along with principals and our learning services team, 2 internal individuals, teachers, to take those teams on. The needs of the 2 schools are kind of contextually different. So we're looking at people that can come in and do that work. EAs will be in place. And so once we've gone through the process of shifting some folks around and backfilling their positions, which we'll have to do, we will do some training with those folks and anticipate that we'll get running at least initially before the end of this school year with those teams.
Okay, so this particular grant is for these 2 schools, but could you speak to what this means for the other elementary schools in the division? Whether the targeted funding for those 2 sites affects the flexibility of or availability of funds for the other remaining schools in the division?
Good question. So we can only use those funds, those $600,000, for those 2 teams. We can't assign them anywhere else. They're targeted to the 2 schools identified. It doesn't change any of the other complexity funding, the SLS grants, or anything else that we'll get from the province for our upcoming budget. This is completely separate to all of those. So SLS grants, EAL, all of those pieces will continue to flow as they always have. In fact, most of those line items will see between a 3 and 6% increase according to the minister, but there won't be any decrease of funding corresponding to that $600,000 that we received.
Just to clarify, you can't reduce staff at the schools that gets the grant. It's an addition to whatever the base was.
So the reason the other schools were not part of this is because they're not K to 6s?
No, the reason that the other schools were, that those 2 were the schools that received the complexity teams is based on the data that was provided from principals, teachers, LSTs, that we then submitted to the province. So through their data analytics process, they determined which schools received the teams. There was a process to make changes if need be, but in talking with the administration teams at both of those schools, we felt that they were allocated appropriately, which is why they continue to have them. So.
I think we can move on.
All right, so just a few other areas of note. We're still working on a forecast. This was something that me and Jordan had started to work on, but we couldn't get to it with our training schedule and other deadlines that fall in March. So I'll be working closely with Jeff and make sure if it's part of our upcoming budget process. Some financial items. I did mention this before that our enrollment number is down, and towards the end of the year, we're going to expect a negative adjustment to our revenue. And for capital activity, we purchased 3 more school buses at the end of Q2, which cost us $484,000. And 3 old buses were disposed of for a straight gain of $9,000. These buses did not have any book value. So that's all from us.
Any further questions?
Any questions? Yes.
Just before I let Trustee Gimber close, I want to thank Ash for your presentation. You did a fantastic job being thrown into the fire at your first meeting, having to present. And thank you, Mr. Perry, for helping lead us through the financial statements.
Can I just say one thing before you close? And just again to echo Chair Toon, Ash came in and hit the ground running and has done a fantastic job with both being in the finance department and learning as much as he possibly could in a month prior to this meeting, but also becoming part of the team. And I think knowing how difficult it can be to come into a new organization and a new people, new colleagues, you've done a fantastic job. You're a great addition to the team, and we're really pleased that you're here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm very excited for what's coming after this, so
Thank you.
really glad to be here.
Trustee Gimber.
I really don't have anything to add except to echo. So that's everything. I think we can just call the question.
Okay, with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Would you like a 5-minute health break before we proceed? There you go. That was quick. Okay, we'll call us back to order at 10:45. And we will move to E5, Grantham Solutions Committee. The Grantham Solutions Committee met March 11th, 2026, and drafted an updated terms of reference. Committee Chair Kathy Charchin will review the updated terms of reference with the Board of Trustees. We have a recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the terms of reference for the Grantham Solution Committee as presented or amended. Somebody like to make that? Trustee Charchin? Nobody's trying to arm wrestle?
Apparently not. Thank you. This is the second time we brought this terms of reference forward. We identified when we brought it forward last time that it had not been updated from previous motions. When I look back, they were 2023, and that was my responsibility to update the terms of reference, and I did not. So the changes that you are seeing is changing 2 trustees and board chair to 3 Ward 1 trustees, superintendent and or designate as the members of the committee, and the rationale why.
Any questions for the committee?
I remember when when this was brought up before, we talked about, when this became a standing committee, all the other standing committees have, any board member could belong to it. Now, I know there was a question that this is just it should just be for the Ward 1 trustees. But as a standing committee, should we be just limiting it to the one ward? I know some of our ad hoc committees are very specific to a ward, but this is a standing committee. Whereas you're saying that just Ward 1 trustees can belong to it.
Does the bullet not underneath of it, all other trustees as alternate, not include that, us as being able to be part of that? Well, I'm just asking because you said because it was a standing committee, should it not be? But I thought maybe the bullet underneath addressed maybe what you were talking about.
No, because it doesn't address it. We could put all other trustees, but we're saying when we're electing them, well, you're not electing them. We're not electing anybody because there's 3 trustees from Ward 1. So this is a standing committee where we're limiting the board members to.
I'm just trying to check quickly, but I believe we had a conversation about this aligning with other committees, including the Livingstone Ski Academy Society, and I can't remember if there was another one that it aligned that practice.
The Livingstone Ski Academy is not a standing committee, is it? It's part of the external committees?
Yeah, I think the reference is that the appointments are only specific to that ward, so a Ward 1 trustee can't serve on that, so that was kind of where the parallels, I think, were being raised on that. Trustee Gimber? I can speak, just one of the challenges with it is because when the numbers shifted in the wards, this committee was pre that number, so there was the ability to add additional trustees, and now that there's 3, if we go to 3 or 1, you're adding to it, you have quorum of the board, so not wanting to have a situation where you could have the majority of the board sitting on a committee if you even added 3 and the chair, if the chair's not in Ward 1, it could complicate that scenario. I remember that was part of the discussion.
Well, you could still have 3 trustees, but, and of course, the chair is the ex officio if he wants to be, but this gives all trustees, because when you're looking at it, this isn't just for Ward 1, because what is happening within Grantham could be affecting any of our smaller schools. Therefore, I think when I look at it, I think that any trustee, if they so desire, should be able to sit on this committee if they want to give input into it, because this isn't just a ward issue. This is a divisional issue.
So just to clarify, trustee, I guess before we go to trustee Gimber, are you requesting an amendment to strike out the Ward 1 trustees and move to any 3 trustees?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an amendment proposed on the floor. I have trustee Gimber still in the queue. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yes, I would, actually.
Sorry.
So this, what is being suggested as an amendment was the topic of an entire motion that came forward. So I don't know if I can do it right now, but I would like to postpone this or table it until we can go back and see the different motions that have happened in regards to this, because it was an entire conversation that happened and this is what was landed on.
So just from our Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheet to make sure I'm in alignment and not doing Bob's Rules of Order, to suspend further consideration, we have a motion to table. It is not interruptible, which was not interrupted. It is non-debatable and it is non-amendable. So it is a straight majority of the board to, if you so wish, to table this for future consideration. So I would ask for all those in favor of tabling the motion until the future information can be brought forward. All those in favor? Opposed? Yeah. Okay, so we have back to the original amended motion. And if we can deal with that, unless there's a point of information brought forward.
I can share a motion for point of information. I don't know if I have the terms right, if I may. At the organizational meeting on November 1st, 2023, motion number 23073, Trustee Yegus moved that the Board of Trustees approve membership of the Grantham Solution Committee as 3 trustees, representatives Trustee Charchin, Trustee Gimber, Trustee Toon, and that motion was carried.
Okay, thank you for that. So I would ask for the direction from the board. Would you like to continue on and table it to a future meeting, or would you like to set it aside for later in the meeting so you can consider the information that was provided? Would ask for a motion from the floor on how you wish to proceed.
I would like to set this aside. I can't remember all these things now. Too much in my mind. To postpone consideration. I move to propose let's see.
Postpone until when, Trustee Yegus?
I would like to postpone this till the next meeting so that we could get some information and maybe discuss it at a meeting of the whole.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone that is debatable and amendable. So now it's on the floor. If anyone would like to discuss postponing it to our next agenda. Okay, seeing.
Sorry, point of information.
Yeah.
Or whatever. We're questioning what happened to the motion that was on the floor for tabling. Was that just for the amendment?
That-
We tabled the amendment, and that's it?
No, we tabled it till we got the information, and we received the information on the amendment immediately after. So now if you'd like to have that information, an opportunity to consider that information before making the decision, Trustee Yegus has put forward to postpone it till, which is different than table, postpone it until the next meeting.
So thank you, Trustee Charchin, for providing the information that you did provide. However, it's not the one that I'm referencing. There was actually a specific motion that was out there, not at an organizational meeting. And it may have even been when we were moving it from being an ad hoc committee to a standing committee. So that is the information that I'm seeking before I can make a decision on this. So yes, I'm in favor of postponing this until the next meeting.
Okay, just to be clear, if there is, for clarity's sake, we'll postpone it till the next meeting, and if that information isn't brought forward till then, we would still have it on the agenda for a discussion on how to proceed, so. Now we have the motion to postpone until next board meeting. Is there any further discussion about that motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Would you like to close on that, Trustee Yegus? Okay, all those in favor of postponing the motion until the next board meeting? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. We will continue on in the agenda to scheduling a special meeting. Chair Toon will discuss the need for a special meeting on March 30th, 2026. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve holding a special meeting on March 30th, 2026. Can I get somebody to make the motion, please? Trustee Hodges, thank you. And I know it's says my name's attached to this, but I'm gonna default to Mr. Perry on the background provided this. I apologize that not, but this came out of our value scoping session and the information coming out of that for approval. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Perry, put him on the spot to bring forward the information.
Okay, thank you, Chair Toon. As you know, one of the requirements the board has is to approve the capital plan for the division. That's to be approved and provided to the government, Alberta Education, by April 1st. With the value scoping session for Livingstone School and other initiatives, that information wasn't available to be able to bring to today's meeting in order for the board to consider and the proposed capital plan. And so the value scoping session report will be provided on the 27th of March with a proposed special board meeting on the 30th to consider the capital plan as it's part of the requirements, as I just mentioned. So that's really the intent of that meeting. The presentation of the value scoping session at this special board meeting would be completed by our facilitator from the value scoping session. So they will speak to the report that was provided on that will be provided on the 27th as to what the recommendation was that came out of the value scoping session, and an opportunity to ask questions and things of that nature, because not all trustees are at that value scoping session. So that is kind of the clarification of why there's a need for that.
Thank you. And just for everyone's information, the intent is to have that virtually at 1 o'clock unless there's other agenda items that arise that facilitate it needing to be in person. So that would be on that day at 1 o'clock. I have Trustee Long and then Trustee Hodges.
Thank you. Just a question, is 1 o'clock a firm time? Was there any opportunity to have it an hour earlier, or was 1 o'clock just kind of?
If you'd like to amend it to be at noon, I'm sure we could specify that in the motion, and that way it's on the books.
I just would like to make an amendment then if we could have, I mean, I guess it depends on whether the person joining us is available too, but I would like to make an amendment to have it at noon.
We have an amendment on the floor. Any discussion?
The question is for Jeff, then, can the facilitator meet us at noon?
Would it be okay to put, if possible, as a amendment in there, just to facilitate if it can't be, that it would revert back to the 1 o'clock time, if that works for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. That way it holds the same intent that we're trying to do that and not having to bounce back the emails back and forth.
Yeah, at noon if possible. Perfect. Thank you, Nikki.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Call the question. Would you like to close? Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. And any further discussion on the motion? Thank you, Mr. Perry, for providing the background. You want to close? Okay, the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve holding a special meeting on March 30th, 2026 at noon if possible. Calling the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to Board Policy 20, and it is included in the agenda package, the draft revision of Policy 20, Public Interest and Disclosure Whistleblower. Upon approval, this document will replace the existing Policy 20, bringing our policy into compliance with new regulations. The recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve the revised Board Policy 20, Public Interest Disclosure Whistleblower Protection as presented or amended. Trustee Hodges, would you like to make that motion, or who's on?
I'll make that motion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, just for clarity, this is a repeal and replace of our current existing policy that we have on the books. So turn it over to the committee members if you'd like to speak to it.
Thank you. This just brings us in alignment with our requirements. I came across this a little while ago, and it unfortunately just was brought to the board now, but this will replace our existing board policy 20, and so everybody, I'm sure, has had an opportunity to read this, but it's just the whistleblower protection, which brings us into alignment with all the regulations.
Any discussion? Seeing none, thank you for Policy Committee for keeping on top of the changes and bringing forward such a great addition to our policies that's required. Any closing?
Nope.
Okay, with that, we'll call the question. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the revised Board Policy 20, Public Interest Disclosure Whistleblower Protection as presented. All those in favor? That is carried. No more tongue twister motions. And moving on to our last agenda item, I am going to remove myself from the chair for this and turn it over to our vice chair to chair if he so chooses.
I really don't choose, actually.
You don't choose, then we can open it up to anyone else or Mr. Perry.
Yeah, actually, I would like to be able to be part of this one.
Don't see anyone else trying to raise their hand.
Do I get to choose? Just get, okay. So action item E8, rationale and background, board policy on school access and fees for nonprofit societies. Do you want me to read through the entire?
No, just the recommendation is probably good enough.
Okay. So the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees develop and implement a formal policy governing the use of school facilities by societies and not-for-profit community groups, specifically addressing access and fee waivers for school-focused fundraising events and meetings. And so I will, is there anyone that would be willing to make that motion? Trustee Toon? Would you like to speak to it, Trustee Toon?
Yeah, I can, thank you. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion about this recently in various communities. Just want to reiterate how amazing it is, the support of our communities, of our schools, the societies, the friends of, all the groups that raise money and help support our schools. There's a lot of dollars and a lot of volunteer hours that go into supporting everything that happens in our schools, and we want to make sure that we as a board have our, at a governance level, what the overarching desire as the board is to do this. So felt with our role as governance that we share our thoughts through correlated policy development, which comes back to the whole board for approval, that I think that it's important for us to have something on the books with this, because it has been brought up to myself recently and possibly others. What's the board's thoughts on this? And really our thoughts on things only come from clear policy direction to administration. If we have personal feelings, it might be different, but we as a united board can share things through board motions to direct policy. So that's why rationale for bringing this forward, and appreciate the thoughts and input on the board on moving forward with the policy.
Thank you, Trustee Toon. Is there any comments, questions from the rest of the trustees? Trustee Burdette.
Yeah. It's on, good. I guess what I'm getting at is, in the lead up to it here, it talks about, I don't know, inequities and I guess what I want to know is why, what's happening now, and is this about, I think we heard about this from Mr. Perry, I don't know, a couple board meetings ago. And how is, I guess what I'm getting at is, our policy now is that these groups, their insurance isn't covered, or we don't have a policy, but they act, what's happening now is their insurance isn't covered and they have to cover their own stuff like that. Is that what we're talking about?
Trustee Toon.
Yeah, I can speak that. So yes, there was a presentation that came to the board talking about that, and for years there was the practice and there was what was happening, and so just really wanting to make sure that it's aligned, so it's not arduous for staff and for administration to articulate to potential people what the go forward is on things, and to make sure that the desire of the board, it doesn't guarantee that the fees are waived or that those things are waived for schools going forward for fundraising or for events or for meetings. It just allows for the board to set out desires on what that could possibly look like, and without it being something that is just comes forward from one area or one incident, where it's the same going across for if there's groups that are school focused fundraising, that we're consistent across the whole division. It doesn't come on, it's not on a principal or an administrator to try and articulate what's going on there and have that inconsistency, because we've heard some schools that where it wasn't happening and some where it was happening, and so making sure that it's across the board in place and what the board desires on how we support those groups that are doing the fundraising for us.
Okay. I mean, so it sounds like to me that if we were supporting all of these groups now and there wasn't a reason why it had to change, that we probably wouldn't be talking about it. I don't know whether we need to have a policy on this. I think administration, if that's the way our thing runs now, where we can't afford to, I know we looked at our budgets are really, really tight. If we can't afford to be carrying the water for every group that's not an actual, all the extra societies, it's not a real issue that they have to get their own insurance. It's just another expense for what they're doing, but I don't believe that's an issue. And I don't believe it's an issue that they need to pay to use the building, because there's cost to us for that. And if they're using the building for that, that becomes an expense of your fundraising. If you're fundraising, you expect to have expenses, and that becomes part of your expense. So I don't think that we need to actually build a policy around this. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Trustee Burdette. Trustee Gimber.
Thank you. I'm pleased to speak in favor of this motion, and specifically the parent societies and community nonprofits that play a vital role in supporting our schools. They raise funds particularly and specifically for our schools, build community, and they contribute directly to student experiences. So making it easier and more affordable for them to meet and operate in our facilities is actually an investment back into our own division. So a clear policy will also bring consistency and fairness across all the schools. It removes the burden of ad hoc decisions on admin, and it strengthens our governance by setting out transparent expectations around access, fees, and liability. The motion supports the people who are directly supporting our students. I'm not talking about the tennis group that comes in and uses the gym. I'm specifically referring to the associations out there whose mandate is 100% fundraising for our schools. So I think this provides the clarity that our system needs, and I'm 100% in favor of this.
Thank you, Trustee Gimber. Trustee Hodges, and then Trustee Long.
I also am in favor of this. I think that just echoing what Trustee Gimber just said, I do just have a question, and this might just come out naturally when the board, whether this is passed or not, but I just wondered if, along with a policy that guides us, if there would be an admin procedure for a possibility, because if this is outlining how this operates, that affects our principals, our staff in that way. And so this might be something that comes down the road, but it was a thought that I just thought could align coexistently. And I also just wondered, just for information's sake, and for information if this passes on building a policy, is this in conflict with our insurance?
I'll say two things just for clarification purposes. There is a procedure in process that's being built right now operationally. And it would depend what's in the policy as to whether it would be in conflict with insurance. I would have no idea until I understand what was going into the policy. So thank you, Trustee Hodges. Trustee Long. Okay, Trustee Yegas.
Yes, Admin Procedure 550 talks about the community use of school facilities, and I don't know how, I just looked over this very quickly, but is there much of a difference on it? And secondly, I think, actually, I am in favor of this, and the primary thing is when we did our value scoping for the Livingstone School, one of the things that was talked about was the community use. And I think we have also looked at it for other schools that have been built. I think with current building, our redesign of schools, our schools, we're looking more at community use of schools. So it's good to get, and as was mentioned, a lot of for example, the gymnasiums are being supported by the community. So it's good to get ahead of this situation now rather than waiting until later on. So yeah, I am in favor of it. But I would also like to know how this compares with our Admin Procedure 550.
Thanks, Trustee Yegas. Any other? Trustee Hodges.
Just one more clarity-seeking information question. In the recommendation, it is the Board of Trustees develop and implement a formal policy. Is that the board's going to do this, or is it being directed to policy to do it and then bring it back to the board?
Trustee Toon, do you want to explain your intent of the motion?
Yeah, the intent just said the board, if it's assigned to policy, if it's assigned to governance, if it's assigned to any committee, that we could have a discussion about that afterwards, but just wanted to ensure that the opportunity was broad, so it could be where the board most saw the fit and the need to develop it.
Thank you, Chair Toon. I have Trustee Charchin and then Trustee Long.
My apologies, I think I might have missed something. Sorry, I keep wanting to look there. If we could just have a really quick summary of why we would be opposed to this. So I guess I'm asking Trustee Burdette. I'd like to really understand why we don't think it's a good idea, if possible.
Trustee Burdette, do you want to respond?
Well, I guess for me, I believe you guys are working on an admin procedure.
Revised admin
around
procedure, yeah.
Revising your admin procedure. And if it's in their wheelhouse to look after it, I'm not sure why we have to get involved in it. That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Trustee Burdette. Trustee Long?
I just wanted to support the idea of policy doing the groundwork and then presenting that to the board rather than the whole board being involved in research and development. So I think policy doing it is a good idea.
Any other, yeah, Trustee Toon? Yeah. Okay, does anybody else have any other additional comments, questions? Okay, we'll ask Trustee Toon to close.
Thank you. Appreciate the great discussion. I think it's important when administration is working on procedures and updatings that there is that governance lens that goes in there, and it's in a formal process so that it allows for a committee to work on it, bring it forward to the board, the entire board gets input, and that way it's clear what the expectations are from the board, and we can all be correlated and supportive of it. When something is brought as a draft admin procedure, how does admin go forward with that? It's not, admin procedure isn't our sandbox, so any input that we're giving would just be as a stakeholder in that input. So it's really a struggle for me. If the work is truly collaborative, we develop policy that helps inform admin procedure in the kind of hand in glove scenario. I look at this as not wanting to overdue, and I think that there's a huge staff saving and administration savings in this. I look at it similar to somebody mailing out a check for $1 or $2. We've all seen those refund checks that come out, and you look at this, well, it costs more in the stamp, it costs more in the time to print the paper and do all this. It's so much for admin to invoice and bill for some of these meetings where it's just a meeting. There isn't a huge risk involved in it. So if there is a desire from the board to waive the fees for these groups and make it so the school is accessible for these groups, I think it fosters relationships where somebody's raising potentially thousands of dollars for our schools and our community, and we're going to sit there and ask for fees for however amount for meetings. They're just going to find other spaces, which loosens that connection between the schools, because they can take it out of the money that they raise, but for them, it's an accounting thing, and they're all volunteers that do this. So really, I think this is respectful about admin's time and respectful about our amazing volunteers that do so much for our community, so we can ensure that our schools continue to be the hubs of our community that we love. We've seen it with how when schools are modernized and renovated, that they are enhanced to allow more community use, and those are great partnerships that we want to build even with our schools that haven't had that opportunity. We set the standard by making sure schools are the heart of all our communities. So I'd ask for your support in consideration of this motion.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Perry, I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Okay, you have the request of a recorded vote. Okay, with that, I will call the question. So I will reread the motion that the Board of Trustees develop and implement a formal policy governing the use of school facilities by societies and not-for-profit community groups specifically addressing access and fee waivers for school-focused fundraising events and meetings. All in favor? Any opposed? You got that, Nikki? Okay. Thank you. That is carried, and I will turn the chair back over to Trustee Toon.
And we move into our agenda. We have in camera. And so I would ask at 11:20, somebody to make the motion to go in camera. Trustee Yegus, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So we will move next door to continue on our agenda.